Hello and welcome to the Lead with Ease podcast with me, Namita Purohit. As a leadership coach, I am dedicated to helping my clients operate at levels very few aspire to. This podcast is proudly sponsored by the Lead with Ease Academy, a community for leaders to find their inner circle, courses, coaches, and certifications to help them get to the next level in their leadership. In this podcast episode, I'm going to talk about shadow work using Shakespeare's play on the Macbeth story to point out why shadow work is important for leaders. We'll touch upon lessons from his story, 3 things leaders can do to work on their inner selves to do the shadow work, and a case study on how a leader's shadow caused harm to himself, his people, company, and customers, and how through coaching, by working on his shadow, he was able to undo all that damage and take his company and himself to newer heights. Now, leadership comes with its own set of challenges, external challenges, and one of which, not the external challenges, but there are many external challenges and there are internal challenges. And one of those internal challenges is confronting those darker aspects of ourselves. What Carl Jung, a very famous Swiss psychologist who's done a lot of research and studied different cultures across the world, and he called this the darker aspects of ourselves as the shadow. And the shadow is that part of ourselves that we often deny or repress, containing our fears, desires, irrational beliefs, unresolved conflicts, and something that we just want to keep pushing in the background, lumping it back into the box, not letting it come out, but it's there nevertheless. And it's impacting us. It's impacting leaders in various different ways. So in Shakespeare's Macbeth, we see Macbeth is a leader who, instead of facing his own shadow, lets this dark part of him consume him completely, leading to his ultimate downfall. Now, Macbeth's tragic journey begins with, the 3 witches that he encounters on the way and their ominous predictions. And those plant the seeds of ambition and desire for power, shadow aspects of his personality that he never confronted. There's nothing wrong with ambition and desire for power, but this is unrestrained ambition, unrestrained desire for power, come what may, outside of the framework of his values. Something that he had never confronted, right? So fueled by the witch's prophecy that he will become king, Macbeth's ambitions grow unchecked. And when Lady Macbeth comes to know about this prophecy, and when she senses his hesitation in not doing anything about it, because one of the ways to achieve that would be to kill somebody, she pushes him further into the darkness, and by questioning his manhood, challenging his courage, and she relentlessly urges him to murder King Duncan to seize the throne. Now, Macbeth has some reluctance and initial guilt, whereas Lady Macbeth is super clear about what she wants. But Macbeth does have some internal conflict, but he chooses to not confront those feelings, and then he just follows Lady Macbeth, and he does that. He buries those feelings, allows his shadow to grow stronger and more insidious. It doesn't end with just killing King Duncan. Yes? And as Macbeth descends deeper into his shadow, and his guilt starts manifesting in disturbing ways, because one of the things that I used to be very curious about is how do toxic people, how do narcissistic people, how do abusive people sleep at night after doing such heinous activities against their loved ones? And I was like, yeah, they probably suppressed their shadow. And that question truly brought me into studying the story of Macbeth, understanding Shakespeare's point of view, and then also studying Carl Jung's work on the shadow work, right? So the way these people are able to sleep at night is by suppressing that shadow completely. They don't even allow it to rear its head. Yes. But you can't keep something pushed down for a long time because we all live in truth. There is an absolute truth. And truth does have its own way of showing up. And one of the ways it shows up is as guilt, which manifests in disturbing ways. And Macbeth starts seeing visions like the famous hallucination of, and for those of you, there's a link to the blog also here. You can see that picture. Like the famous hallucination of a blood-stained dagger leading him to Duncan's chamber, right? And he's continuously seeing those images, he's seeing that, and he's disturbed. But instead of addressing his guilt, instead of atoning for what he has done, he just suppresses it. And by suppressing it, it doesn't go away. His shadow becomes more powerful. And this growing darkness, the shadow becoming bigger and bigger, it leads him to commit further atrocities, kill more people, including the murder of Banquo, the man who was with him when he heard those prophecies from the witches. And he massacres Macduff's family, all because he wants to do everything to secure his power and silence his inner torment, right? Sometimes people, to silence their inner torment, they continue doing vicious activities, right? And then Macbeth's this shadow, this unrestrained shadow, the shadow that he didn't work upon, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it eventually consumes him. He becomes consumed by paranoia, fear. He's seeing all kinds of visions. He isolates himself, trusting nobody. And the man who once hesitated to kill now sees murder as the only solution to his problems. And now his shadow is fully in his control, as you also see in narcissistic, abusive people. And it drives him to a path of self-destruction. Now, on the other hand, Lady Macbeth, his wife, the one who pushed him, questioned his manhood, he at least had some inner hesitation. Lady Macbeth had no hesitation at that time. She seemed to revel in her own darkness. And she begins to crumble under the weight of guilt. It's not like it's coming to the surface, but she is haunted continuously she sees blood on her hands that she cannot wash away. And it's like a symbol of irreversible consequences of their actions. So the torment is happening. It's just that she's trying to suppress it. And she descends into madness. She's sleepwalking. She has obsessive hand washing. And she mirrors the psychological torment that arises when one ignores the ethical, moral consequences of their actions, right? Now, in the end, both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are destroyed by their shadows because they refuse to confront them and they become too big. Macbeth dies at the hands of Macduff, a man born of a prophecy, one of those three things that those witches said, that foretold Macbeth's downfall. And his death, and that's why he was trying to kill Macduff. Now, his death is not just the end of a tyrant, but basically it's the inevitable consequence of a leader who did not confront his shadow, but allowed his shadow to dictate his actions. Now, for leaders today, like you, who's listening in, Macbeth's story is a reminder of the dangers of ignoring our own shadows. Yes. And they can grow uncontrollably, leading us to make decisions that harm not only ourselves, but also those around us. Now, let's look at a case study of a leader, a CEO, John Mitchell. Of course, I've changed names to maintain privacy for my clients, who's the CEO of a very big tech company, 𝐸, again, name changed, a fast-growing tech company. And his shadow was perfectionism, right? He cast a very long shadow of this perfectionism on his team, on the growth of his company and profitability and so on. Yes. So because he always prided himself on his very meticulous attention to details and very high standards. And his perfectionism propelled the company from a small startup to a leader in its industry. Perfectionism has its place, but not every time. But however, as the company grew, so did the challenges associated with his leadership style. Like it led to his perfectionism impacted growth it led to growth stagnation. because, his perfectionism lended him to a very slow decision-making process. He would delay product launches, delay things because he was never satisfied with the product. Missed market opportunities would lead to frustration within the team. And the company's growth, which was once really rapid, started to stagnate as competitors were quicker to market and they began to outperform Innovate X. And there was an innovation blockage, right? Because people were hesitant to propose new ideas because they would be fearful about being criticized by, John for their ideas not meeting the standards, and the company became risk averse, which is again detrimental in the tech industry that thrives on innovation and rapid iteration. Yes. This led to an impact on people. There was employee burnout. They had very unrealistic expectations, and that culture spread across the team, and that led to widespread burnout. They worked long hours to perfect their work, but then they had to redo things so many times. But yet, John was never happy, and the products never came out to life. And they had a very diminished morale because nothing ever they did was up to his standards, and mistakes were not tolerated, and so on. So they didn't feel psychologically safe around him. And the impact in the company was that there was a culture of toxicity because of, the managers, the culture spreading, and they had to emulate John. And, the company's reputation as a desirable place to work was going down. And there was strategic misalignment because his focus was perfection, but instead of focusing on the big picture, the long-term vision, and instead of being quick, agile, responding to market situations, etc., he was lost in the details. And of course, there was innovation blockage and growth stagnation, as I talked about. Now coaching, John was getting feedback, right, about him, and the board was giving him feedback. The different reports were giving feedback. It was there in the numbers, and he didn't realize what was happening, and he sought coaching with me. And through my signature ease model that integrates Eastern wisdom and Western psychology, we did 3 things, right? John first learned to identify and address the root causes of his perfectionism. Like, where is this coming from? First is to recognize, but then where is it coming from? Why is it there? And then healing all of that, working on all of that. Second thing is he was guided to embrace vulnerability and shift from a mindset of control to one of trust. And that not only allowed him to delegate more effectively, but also create a culture where his team felt empowered to take risks and innovate. And as he began to let go of his need for perfection, there was a resurgence in growth in the company. Employee morale improved. Company's culture went back to, the culture of collaboration, creativity, and encouragement. And John emerged as a more balanced and self-aware leader, steering the company to long-term success. Now, shadow work that John did is not just about becoming a better leader. It's also a profound spiritual practice. Now, when you confront and embrace your shadows, you embark on a journey towards wholeness and spiritual growth. Now, when you integrate your shadow, you move closer to who you truly are. You work more authentically. You free from the masks and defenses, and you grow ahead. And it allows you to have greater authenticity, compassion, and wisdom. And another beautiful thing happens is that when a leader has not confronted their shadows, their dark sides, the employees, the reports, and the team members can tell, right? They can tell when the leader is not dealing with their darker aspects. And that leads to a loss of respect and trust. Like when a leader's shadow is evident, like John's was, but he didn't address it. There was not a great atmosphere in that company. And it didn't work in, improving employee morale or creativity, collaboration, etc. But when he did work on his shadow and he came back as a different person, employees were loving him. They were ready to embrace him. They were happy to see him that he had done his work. And they were happy to trust him, and they were happy to work under him, and they were happy to even confront their own shadows and do the inner work, right? Now, this is very important. And Carl Jung, he did emphasize the importance of integrating the shadow into our conscious life. And he believed a lot of his work is around, integrating our shadows, working on our shadows. And he believed that when we did that, we would become very whole and authentic individuals, and with greater self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and ability to connect with others on a deeper level. Very important traits for a leader. Now, what are 3 things that leaders can do, right? What can 3 things leaders can do to work on their shadows? And the first thing is self-reflection. It's like engage in deep self-reflection to identify aspects of yourself which you might be ignoring or denying. And journaling or meditating, working with peers, working with a coach, especially the kind of the facilities we provide in the Lead with Ease Academy, where you have access to a community, we have access to of like-minded leaders, you have access to coaching, and that gives you a chance to reflect and think and work on yourself. Yes, and self-reflection also involves learning how to love and accept ourselves in spite of our shadows. Macbeth found it hard. Lady Macbeth found it hard. John found it hard, but he worked on it. Narcissistic people find it extremely hard, and therefore they remain narcissists for life. But when we learn how to solidly love ourselves, accept ourselves in spite of our shadows, we actually make massive progress in overcoming the shadows. But when we keep suppressing the shadows, we don't grow. And to help you with your self-love journey and to become solidly partnered with yourself, I also have self-love 7-day spiritual affirmation cards to help you learn how to accept all these parts, these different shadow parts in yourself with a lot of love and compassion. Yes. Now, the second thing that leaders can do is seek feedback. Encourage honest feedback from trusted colleagues, mentors, learn how to read the room, try to get 360-degree and anonymous feedback also if they don't want to be named from people. And that can give you a lot of insights and behaviors or attitudes you may not be fully aware of. Learn how to read the room, learn how to read the body language in the room when you're talking. Learn how to see how people are responding to you, and you're going to get a lot of cues about how people are perceiving you and what your shadows are. And consider getting professional support, working with a coach like me, and I specialize in shadow work that can guide you through the process of confronting and integrating your shadow, or join the Lead with Ease community program academy, where you get access to not just coaching, but you also get access to courses, certifications, and community. Yes. And I've helped many leaders with their shadows, which has helped them have a greater impact in their leadership. So, having said that, Macbeth was driven by ambition and a thirst for power, and he commits such sinful, heinous acts, including murder. And all this because he ignores his shadow, and it leads to such massive self-destruction. And that's the same thing that happens to leaders of today. Now, you may cultivate, another lesson is you may cultivate awareness, like Macbeth did have some moments of awareness if you read the play about his wrongdoings, but he fails to take any meaningful steps to address them. And his awareness becomes a source of torment rather than transformation. So awareness without any action is insufficient. And thirdly, if you have suppressed shadows, it's going to impact everyone. We already talked about it, right? Like he himself, he and his wife both are struggling with their shadows. They're not able to be themselves. They're not able to, lead. They're not able to do anything properly. And it also creates a very toxic environment of fear for people around you. And it doesn't help you with your leadership if you're creating that kind of environment. So it's very important for leaders to work on their shadows. And we are here to help you with the Lead with Ease Academy. And we look forward to serving you inside. And I hope you liked this podcast. If you did, please share it with your friends. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And would love to hear in the comments how this landed for you and what lessons do you learn from this. Thank you so much.